All right, folks, welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Wanda Coleman Theater. Welcome to Beyond Baroque. My name is Jimmy Vega. I am the interim executive director of Beyond Baroque. Thank you, thank you. I'd like to start by acknowledging Beyond Baroque's presence on the unceded territory of the Tonga peoples. We acknowledge the wrong done to these peoples through settler colonialism, genocidal practices, and the violent disposition of their land. For those who don't know, Beyond Baroque is Los Angeles' oldest literary arts center. Yes, yes. Turning 57 this year. We occupy the old Venice City Hall. We support writers and new writing through our extensive program of reading series, writing workshops, and performances. I want to invite you tomorrow to come back, if you have the opportunity, for a very important retrospective on the Chicano poet Raul Salinas. That's going to be happening at 6 p.m. Yes, that's going to be awesome. It's going to be some film screenings. We're going to have the director of that film, a short kind of documentary-style poetry film, will be here with us. And it's going to be a great time. And next week, on October 11th, we are going to be opening up our latest exhibition show in our Mike Kelly Gallery, East of Western. That's going to be intimate portraits of Charles Bukowski that have never been seen before in America. So the photographer, Joan Ganny, is traveling from Amsterdam to join us here in conversation with our good friend Mike Sonskin. That's going to be happening at 4 with the gallery tour, and then the conversation at 5 next week. I also want to mention that we have the IWP workshop right now. That's a collaboration with the University of Iowa and the International Writing Program. That's available online for you to check out as well. We're at BB Lit Arts on social media and beyondbaroque.org on our website. And then just a couple of other small things to mention, or maybe not so small. As many of you know, we lost our NEA grant this year, by the current administration, and we are no longer able to host the Southern California Poetry Festival this fall. So instead, we're activating the space here with a couple of different fundraisers. So on November 9th, we're going to be having a very intimate gathering, a dinner at a house in Venice. So I welcome you all to save that date. And on November 15th, the day we would have had that Southern California Poetry Festival, we're just going to throw our own marathon-style reading. Yeah. We're going to gather over 50 poets here in the Wanda Coleman Theater, and we're going to bring art, and we're going to bring poetry, and we're not going to back down from any sort of administration that tries to intimidate us. So that's going to happen in November 15th. Please do save the day. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be here all day in community. So I think that's it. I want to welcome Lynne Thompson up to the stage to help us welcome Kevin Young. I appreciate you all being here. I'm going to read Lynne's bio here to help us welcome her. Lynne Thompson was the 4th Poet Laureate for the city of Los Angeles, the daughter of Caribbean immigrants. Her poetry collections include Beg No Pardon, winner of the Perguia Press Prize and the Great Lakes Colleges Association, New Writers Award, Start with a Small Guitar from What Books Press, and Fretwork, winner of the Marsh Hawk Press Poetry Prize. Thompson's honors include the Tuscan Festival of Books Literary Award and the Stephen Dunn Prize for Poetry, as well as fellowships from the City of Los Angeles, Vermont Studio Center, and the Summer Literary Series in Kenya. Let's make some noise for Lynne Thompson.
Did you guys see this new rug they got? I mean, Jimmy is stepping up in the place, right? This is fantastic. It's so good to see the audience so full because we know we don't get Mr. Young on the West Coast very often. And it's a true act of love because he and I were both in New York last night for an event. So we flew in today. I'm on fumes, so I know he's on fumes plus, but we're gonna soldier through. So I would have had a more creative bio, but as I said, I just got home today at 5 o'clock. Okay. Kevin Young is the author of 16 books of poetry and prose, including his most recent, Night Watch. He is the poetry editor of The New Yorker, where he hosts the Poetry Podcast, and the editor of 11 volumes, including A Century of Poetry. This book stopped in The New Yorker, 1925 to 2025, and the acclaimed anthology, which I think I saw in the bookstore, African American Poetry, 250 Years of Struggle and Song. He currently serves as the Distinguished Writer in Residence at New York University. Other books include Stones, shortlisted for the T.S. Eliot Prize, Blue Laws, Selected and Uncollected Poems, 1995 through 2015, longlisted for the National Book Award, Book of Hours, winner of the Lenore Marshall Prize from the Academy of American Poets, my personal favorite, Jelly Roll, a Blues, a finalist for the National Book Award, and the Los Angeles Times Book Prize for Poetry. His honors include a Stegner Fellowship in Poetry at Stanford University, a Guggenheim Foundation Fellowship, a MacDowell Fellowship, and Harvard Arts Medal. Named a Chancellor of the Academy of American Poets in 2020, Young is a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, the American Academy of Arts and Letters, and the Society of American Historians. I don't think he does enough. So, join me in welcoming Kevin Young.
Good evening, everyone. So good to see you. Thanks for coming out on a Friday. It's so exciting to be here. I just got in, as Lynne mentioned, and thank you, Lynne, for that introduction. I'm looking forward to our conversation later. I'm mostly going to read from Night Watch, but I thought I would read a little bit from the New Yorker anthology, which came out just in February on the centenary of the New Yorker's founding. The thing about putting together the book is I learned doing it, that Langston Hughes was the first black poet in the anthology in '39, I think it was. So I'll read this poem from the early '40s by him, which is very, very short, and to me, like, sort of sets the tone, I hope, that comes up in my book, it turns out. Langston Hughes. This is called Wake. Wake. Tell all my mourners to mourn in red, 'cause there ain't no sense in my being dead. That's it. I love that. I don't need to read it, I can remember it. I thought I'd read just a couple of poems, some of which I had the opportunity to publish, including this one by Terrence Hayes, the wonderful poet. And since we're here in the Wanda Coleman Theater, this is one of his American sonnets, which riff off her American sonnets, and this was called American Sonnet for the New Year. It came out a few years ago. American Sonnet for the New Year. Things got terribly ugly incredibly quickly. Things got ugly embarrassingly quickly. Actually, things got ugly unbelievably quickly. Honestly, things got ugly seemingly infrequently. Initially, things got ugly, ironically, usually, awfully, carefully, things got ugly unsuccessfully. Occasionally, things got ugly mostly painstakingly. Quietly, seemingly, things got ugly beautifully. Infrequently, things got ugly sadly, especially. Frequently, unfortunately, things got ugly, increasingly. Obviously, things got ugly suddenly. Embarrassingly, forcefully, things got really ugly. Regularly, truly, quickly. Things got really incredibly ugly. Things will get less ugly inevitably, hopefully. It's good stuff. One of the things I did when I was putting the book together is I ended up organizing it in a slightly different way. I didn't want to just go through the decades. That seemed like it would be a long time till we got to the second black poet in the anthology, which was 30 years later. But doing it, I found out I was, in fact, I think I'm the sixth black poet in there. But luckily that changed after a while. And things got incredibly better always. So I'm looking for one of my, what was that? Hold on one second, I lost it. It's a big book, as you mentioned. But one of the things that I wanted to do is really break up the decades by thinking about times of day. And I think we'll talk about this a little bit. But, so it starts with morning bell, I should say. But there's like a lunch break, there's an after-work drink section, so that was really fun. And then, one of the weirder things is trying to realize, like I said, realized my first poem in the New Yorker was actually a poem to Langston Hughes. It was called Langston Hughes. But I thought I'd read this poem called Little Red Corvette, which is for Prince. Little Red Corvette is 2 sonnets. When you were mine, nothing passed us by. Baby, you're much too fast. In 1990, we had us an early 80s party. Nostalgic already. I dug out my best OPs and 2 polos, fluorescent, worn simultaneously, collar up, pretend preppy. When Blondie came on, Rapture, Be Pure, things really got going, and then the dancing got shut down by some square. What was sleep even for? Housequake. What was sleep even for? The year before, a freshman, I threw a Prince party, re-screwed the lights, red and blue. The room all purple, people dancing everywhere. Clicked play on the cassette till we slow sweated to Erotic City or Do Me, Baby, I'm going down to Alphabet Street. Did anyone sleep alone that night? I feel for you. Shut up already. Damn. Cabbage Patch, Reverse Running Man, get some life wherever you can. So the last poem in the book is a poem called The End of Poetry by Ada Limon, which we ran during COVID. And it starts with Try to Praise the Mutilated World, the Zagajewski poem, which appeared after 9/11. Just on the back page of the magazine, you'll recall, and I remember that issue so well, and being on the phone with friends when the first tower fell, and it was just such a, I think, shaping of our time. And it seems appropriate to end with this one by Ada Limon, The End of Poetry. Enough of osseous and chickadee, and sunflower and snowshoes, maple and seed, samara and shoot. Enough chiaroscuro. Enough of thus and prophecy and the stoic farmer, and faith in our Father, and 'tis of thee. Enough of bosom and bud, skin and God, not forgetting, and star bodies and frozen birds. Enough of the will to go on and not go on, or how a certain light does a certain thing. Enough of the kneeling and of the rising, and the looking inward and the looking up. Enough of the gun, the drama, and the acquaintance's suicide, the long-lost letter on the drawer. Enough of the longing and the ego and the obliteration of ego. Enough of the mother and the child and the father and the child. And enough of the pointing to the world, weary and desperate. Enough of the brutal and the border. Enough of can you see me? Can you hear me? Enough I am human. Enough I am alone and I am desperate. Enough of the animal saving me. Enough of the high water. Enough sorrow. Enough the air and its ease. I am asking you to touch me. Well, that was such a time, as you recall, where we couldn't touch. But my California friends would call and say, it's really terrible, I have to go on these hikes, I'd be in a room like the size of the stage. So it was, no, it was terrible, obviously. And, it was such a strange time because I had written Night Watch, basically most of it, but I had put it in a drawer because it felt very dark. And then I pulled it out and I was like, it sounds about right. It feels like what it's like now. And what's weird is it feels even more like that now. So it's a book that thinks through these kinds of questions that the title suggests. And it starts with a poem called Cormorant, which is for my father. And it's about his memories, or my memories of his memories. Cormorant, this is in Louisiana where he's from and my whole family's from. Nobody's angel, even your crown unkempt, looks like an egret in an oil slick. Inelegant pelican diving down to feed, burnt goose, orphaned stork, you skim close to the water, nigger bird we called you, laughing. I've seen you perched on a stump in a swamp, drying your waxless wings, raised like a crucifix, unpraised. Black swan, you flood back to me among the memory of my father driving home. His hands a map pointing out shacks where Negroes once lived, now only timber and anger, still there for him forever. Besmirched crow cousin, dirty seraph, today you are enough. You'll do if only I could see you again, hungry, waiting at the edge of the bayou. Oh, thank you. There are a few birds in the book, and there's a bird on the cover, as you may have seen. And it's in fact a two-headed nightingale, which was the nickname or the stage name or one of the many names for Millie Christine McCoy, who was a set of conjoined twins who referred to herself often as singular and plural. I think of her as singular in so many ways. She was born into slavery. She was stolen and displayed by lots of folks, including P.T. Barnum. Her family, this is unbelievable, her parents sued for her freedom and for her having been stolen and won. She was toured all over when she was freed and was an amazing performer by all accounts. She sang for Queen Victoria, among others. And she has these great pamphlets that include some of her poetry, song. She's a fascinating persons. And so I thought I would read just a few of her that think about this idea of doubleness and dividedness. Which is she, or which are we? All right. Taken, torn, we was always being born from each other. We are the other's mother. From one another we ate what the other did. As one we sang, we spake. She was the body, I the soul. Without one perishes the whole. We each latched, yoked, so knew when they said we were sold that whoever claimed they owned me was chained to us too. We was born blue beneath the Carolina sky where we will die. A horizon inside us, we are like the Carolinas, blue, and our country cleaved in two. We are one of the wonders, another eighth, a note. What if we were sunder? Would we be 9 or none? Married to each other so long, such a cleaving would kill us. One death undoes both. All over Europe we sung, saw the devil drawn like us, many-limbed, dark. We devour nothing. The doctor's despair, the dual unity, are raised up by applause and what the crowds recite along. 2 heads, 4 arms, 4 feet, all in one perfect body meet. My maker knows what he has done. The audience's hands, delighted, made one. It is the after both of me is after. No grave wide enough to hold us, or deep. I, who held each other alive, entwined. Us is what we wrest from the dust. So the last section is called Darkling, and it's a section that's based on Dante. It's actually based on Robert Rauschenberg's drawings about the Charity translation of Dante, which MoMA asked me and Robin Costa-Lewis, the wonderful poet from LA, who we always call each other cousins because our families are from Louisiana. But she and I split up the Inferno, and I took the first part and then the devil, and she took the rest, and it was a beautiful thing to get to do with her. But then, without telling one, I did the other parts too. So I'll read you a little hell, but we've had a lot of it lately, so. All right. This is called Underworld. We are born with all our grief already in us, like teeth, and time works it out of us, our mouths. Pain for a spell, and then there grief sits, a lifetime, shiny, lucky, pomegranate, made before I was unmade. If not, the gaps where once milk teeth sat, replaced by these holes we hope to eat with, each supper a reckoning. It's called Beyond. What if the body is what we bring with us beyond? It is the soul stays here, sullen and consolable, not so much wandering as waiting to be found, reunited, dirtied in the end. It is enough then to see the soul let loose in those moments of ecstasy, not when we leave our body, but when our body arrives finally, and our soul sups, fed like the dead, hands hungry as stray gloves. Fingers may fill them, but still they need the noun of the soul's smell, its plangent personhood. The more they eat, the more they need. The body always becoming, who verbs its way over and under while the soul rocks in the old folks' home. The soul who shivers, grown suddenly cold. I'll skip the devil tonight. Let's hear a little purgatory. I end up putting all these writers in purgatory. I promise I didn't mean to suggest something. So we'll hear a couple of those. This is called Ledge. In Dante's Conception, as you know, there's a stair. And so it starts with a stair poem for Keats, who died on the Spanish steps, looking out at them in Rome. But this is Ledge. No use telling the dead what you've learned since they've learnt it too. How to go on without you. The mercy of mourning or moving. The light that persists, even if. Beauty is as beauty does, my mother says, who is beautiful and speaks loud so she can be understood, unlike poets who can't talk to save their lives. So they write. It's like a language. Loss can be learnt only by living there. What anchors us to this thirst and earth, its threats and thinnesses, its ways of waning and making the most of worse and much worse, if not this light lifting up over the ridge. This is called Ditch. Day he died, Samuel Beckett's father, doctor said, was doing better. Doctor scarcely out the door when dear dad collapsed, sweet pea all over his face. At the promise, Beckett had donned the brightest clothes he could find, later watched last words fall from dad's pained mouth. Fight, 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 and what a morning. 3 days after, Beckett wrote his friend, I cannot write about him. The letter proof to the contrary. I can only walk the fields and climb the ditches after him. His father buried between the mountains and the sea. God love thee, Sam. Potential epitaphs. 1, your turn. 2, what more do you want from me? 3, based on my infant son's favorite phrase, all done. This one's called Elephant Funeral. Stoking the body like coals, dying of the calf who stumbled down and stayed. The elephants rumble and yell almost in a pitch we now know we cannot hear. Or bear, I bet. This mute trumpet, their cries reach only each other and their pity, their piety many miles away. Dead as language, stony body, the elephants parade past and circle. They nudge and lift again, the struck young with their trunks, their ears, semaphores, giant shadows. Later in the red mud they'll wallow. the tamped down grass, a pale echo. Faith. How do the small birds in the street know how not to die? That whatever they gather, hunger for is never enough to keep them in the road when our wheels bear down upon them. They feast on what I cannot see, then fly away and sing. There's a little more paradise coming, don't worry. How about this one? This one's called Diptych, Portraits of Light. It's two parts, as the title says. And it also has sort of the title, one of the inspirations for the titles in it. So, Diptych, Portraits of Light. Night watch. You can fall in love in a museum, but only with the art or its silence. Or the stranger you don't mean to follow, suffering past the old masters and the unnamed servants. Rembrandt's face half in shadow. You can fall for what isn't there already, or with the 13th century. The swan raising up, roosters hung upside down to die on a cross. Even the tourists gathered round the docent. The same jokes and half-truths loom beautiful. The children crying hurried out of sight. Forget the night watch, the crowds. Instead, follow the quiet to the portraits of light entering a room. These walls, few windows, hold the world, what the world couldn't say till someone saw it first. And now it's everywhere. The braids of that woman's hair. Self-portrait with felt hat. One should never be in love when in a museum. Better to be alone, if not utterly, than practically. Tired of feet and routine, forge ahead beyond the bounds of audio tours and family. Isolate. Avoid this couple oblivious to it all, the captions and arrows, kissing like no tomorrow beside Van Gogh's sunflowers. Bruised, chartreuse, brilliant and wilting for years, yet never managing to. Skip holding hands in Gauguin's portrait of Van Gogh, painting what he saw. The crows gather like clouds, black, or the crowds that the couple doesn't care about, numb to all else. Best believe in the world more than yourself. Thanks. I never get to read this one, so you seem nice. I'll read it to you. This is called Black Madonna. The dead multiply and punctuate our lives. Like doubt, they are damn near impossible to bleach out. Their stain, thank Job, can't help but stay, is the one sure thing. Not even the thaw the weatherman calls for arrives on time. Seek shelter. So cold, my ring won't hold my fingers. The dead are gold, our altars say. Once their faces darken or fall away, only clutched hands remain. Let's read a few more. This is called Altarpiece. I've come down with a case of paradise. I've contracted Eden fever. I'm flushed with the wish to be allowed to stay, to watch the maples turn from saplings to trunks it takes 4 men to topple. I've looked around and found myself like hell, no more livable than believed. Like a kite, the light tangled in the trees. The dead won't meet your eye. A strange dog you should greet, fingers tucked under, head averted. The dead don't bite, but bark and claw your door all night. This fever of mine has no father to feed it, no end. The going, then going on. The fury of bees, feed me till I sleep. The pennies lament. On a long journey, honey the only thing that keeps. Nobody's good, everyone lies. When I go, the only mourners will be flies. They arrive wearing black robes, almost polite. I am reborn with a billion eyes and rise at last, my head clear and singing like my wings. I am easy enough to find. Look for me where the rough dirt meets paved street, stones shining your shoes. I don't mind being mistaken for one of the shadows courting the sun, how it clouds and without seeking cannot be seen. Know then the lush cover of what might be leaves, rain like a summons in the trees. This is called Yellow Jacket. The way wasps want your house to be their house, so the dead try and make your home their own. They move in, promising to stay only a week, luggage stuffed with old clothes and tinted photographs. Building their houses of paper, buzzing, they draw the curtains, de-silver the mirrors. So years later, look about, and it's your life the dead are living. Wake and rub the night from your eyes, the paper fetch wet from the yard, the paid death notices and ads for living longer, unread. Mine, not the wings, for such a flight. Each day, later than you like, the lonely postman force feeds words into the hungry mouth of the mailbox, where this small, dunning bird has begun its brittle, briefest nest. This poem, I always tell my friends, a lot of people say, I just want a quiet ceremony when I go, or doesn't matter what happens. I'm like, please, it has to be loud. I want crying. I want Negro spirituals. I want weeping and moaning. So this poem thinks about that a little bit. Grace. No one's from here. Me, I'm just visiting. When I go, don't dare sing Amazing Grace, that tune some slaveholder wrote while at sea, the national anthem of suffering. When I'm gone, don't gnash and weep or retch like me. What my life has become is known above. When I fly away, don't dare hold no vigil, no candles, just burn the whole town on down. All right, I'll end with the last poem in the sequence, which is called Rapture. And then we'll have a little talk. Rapture. I want to be awake when the world ends. I want to be my friend who rose to an empty house, even his grandmother and her worn cross gone, and thought it was the rapture that he hadn't crossed over. Let me rip my shirt as he did and tear into the street, hollering. Let me hear only my blood beat this morning among the rain before the dawn, no one on the line. Later, when they return, let those I love who left have only gone to the store, running errands, this errant, unebbing life. After, let what I've torn, the myself I mourn, be mended and start over like a scar or star. Thank you.
Kevin Young, folks, make some noise all the way from New York. Thank you so much. We're gonna do a quick little changeover. We're gonna invite Kevin and Lynne back to the stage for a conversation. Before we fully do that, I do want to give a big shout out to all of our staff for making tonight possible. Eric Alberg behind me, running sound in the booth. We've got Genesis Perez, Ivan Salinas, Zoe Edescuti, and Annika Duenas out, which you might have met. They're great. They keep this place running, and they've made tonight possible. Barbara Fant is in the house as well. So thank you all to the staff, and thank you all for being here. I think we're ready. Oh, a couple other things, housekeeping notes. We've got a lot of Kevin's books, a lot of Lynne's books in the bookstore. Please pick one up tonight. I'm sure that they would love to sign. We got a small signing table in the bookstore. And then right after you get your books and all of that, we've got a great reception out in the Poets Garden. So again, thank you all so much. I'm going to move this podium now, and then we'll get to some conversation. Yeah. Oh. Okay. We're good. We're good. All right.
I'll sit there, I guess.
Can I get one of those waters?
No, I don't. That's your all.
Thank you. Can we hear it again for the amazing Kevin Young? All right. I'm keeping my little time here, because I know you're anxious to buy books and drink wine. I know this crowd.
In that order?
Man, there's so many things I want to ask you about, and I'm so glad that you read from the anthology, because one of the things I personally wonder about, and I suspect many in the audience do as well, is it a 50-50 balance between being a poet and an anthologist? Because you have quite the history of editing anthologies.
Yeah, no, I think it's more, I try to keep it more 80-20 or something like that. But, when you can put in one place a sort of version of African American history through its poetry, or poetry through its history or something, how can you say no to that? And it was really a beautiful chance to do that, and to do the New Yorker was something I say in the introduction, I had read the New Yorker when I was a kid. I had the New Yorker book of poetry, which I still have my copy underlined. And when David Remnick asked me if I wanted to do it, I was like, only since I was 15, And so to be able to do that was really powerful. And then it was also powerful to look through and say, wow, like that anthology that meant so much to me, the 68 version with the yellow cover and paperback, had no people of color at all in it.
Right.
And so there are all these realizations, and that's more, black folks were fine, it's not like they were wondering or thinking about that, but I also thought like the New Yorker missed out on a good chance to, and it wasn't just that, like in the 70s they published Walcott, who they published quite a bit, they published Marcellus Harper and Audre Lorde.
Yes.
Each exactly once. And I thought, if you can't publish everyone.
Right.
But if they had published 5 more of their poems, how great would that have been? Just, selfishly, I want to read them.
Exactly, but when you say, I'm still kind of caught up with this idea of 2040, because what I wanted to share with the audience, and you can see that I really read them, I've got them marked up. 2 of my favorite anthologies that I didn't reference in the intro were of jazz poems and blues poems. And you're probably familiar with this Everyman, is it this? Yeah, the Everyman Library. And they come out with these neat little books, and you can take them with you and read them at the car wash or whatever, and they're great. But, okay, so these are manageable. The New Yorker anthology and the 250 years of African American poetry, you could kill somebody. So
You think the blues won't kill you? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
I think there's some people who would.
So that's why I think I would challenge. You obviously put so much work into it that I was wondering about that balance between, we have people in the audience, they write both prose and poetry, as you do as well, you write essays, but this idea of, I realized, I said, I guess I do think of Kevin Young as this generation's anthologist.
Oh, well, that's nice. You know, I think I started doing it, you know, to help with like in between projects, and
Right.
it's both mentally good, and you know, sometimes you get a little bit of to do it. But you know, in the case of those books, I got asked to do a jazz poems, and I started to do it. This was after Jelly Roll, and I realized there were all these blues poems,
Right.
and so I had like two, you know, like they asked me to do one, I do two. I mean, so if you put those together, I'm sure it's quite as long as.
They're
But
pretty good.
they're a nice
They're
set,
so
right?
cute.
But you know, the blues poems, I remember saying, well, you know, there hasn't been a book of just blues poems, so to get to do that and to do it after my blues was kind of also how it worked with my anthology of grief poems that I did. I had
Yeah.
already written these grief poems for me, and it was like healing for me to do it. And what's been wonderful is people come up to me still and say that an anthology meant something to them.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, to me, you know, a short New Yorker century would be silly. You know, would not represent the way that, you know, we still get about 40,000 submissions a year. And you know, I remember asking Alice Quinn, who was the person who first took my work, and you know, was before me, right before me was Paul Muldoon, and before him was Alice Quinn, and you know, like, wow, you get so many, you know, and she's like, oh, I worry if we didn't get as many, you know,
Yeah.
and it's a sign to me of poetry's health more than just the magazines, but it's also a sign of how the magazine can do something that other places can't.
Right.
People encounter poems in ways that, as I say in the introduction, are like refrigerator poems, poems they put on the fridge and
Right,
keep or
right.
keep in their wallet. Or
And you've got the podcast as well.
yeah, that's good fun.
Yeah. So
So-
that's great. So as you were reading from the anthology, you talked a little bit about the sections, and I encourage you all, hopefully you'll buy the book, but even if you don't, to just take a peek at how Kevin has broken it up. And I wonder if you talk about that a little bit more, because it's not the traditional, these were the 20s, these were the 30s. No. He was really done some, he's got little amuse-bouche between the sections.
I love that, yeah. You know, I think I thought of it pretty right away. Like, I wanted it not to, you know, start, how wonderful to start with, you know, Dorothy Parker or whomever, you know, the sort of frothy 20s that they were known for. And so that was kind of wonderful to have Ogden Nash and all that represented.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I also thought how great to start with the start of the day and have that alternate through. And, you know, like there's Last Train Home and,
Yes.
you know, a feeling of, because it also had not just this urbane quality, but also, you know, it's in a city, and a lot of the poets are writing about that, and, you know, the beauty of the place, but also of the day. It seemed sort of to fit.
To have a flow to it,
and provide this, you know, amuse-bouche, as you say, but also a way to kind of have people across the century talk to each other.
I just thought of this, so
Yeah.
since I just thought of this, if you don't have an answer, that's good. But can you estimate what percentage of the total poems published in the New Yorker in that century are in the?
Oh,
I
there were 13,500 poems we
Okay.
published.
Okay.
I read 13,490. No, I went through thousands of poems, and there are over 800 poems in the book,
Okay.
and over 500 poets.
Okay, so that's so really representative. But as you're saying that, my eyes are crossing, and I'm like,
Well, can I tell you, I started doing it without a database, and so I was literally just looking online, like you might, like, what Merwin did we publish?
oh my God,
No,
yes,
and we didn't have a database
assumed-
for like 6 months.
I assumed that it's the New Yorker. They have some fancy.
Yeah, no. Well, and my editor kept saying, I think she's like, can't you go to the typist room and pick the bound book? I was like, there's no typist room no more. She worked there in the 90s.
Yeah, exactly.
And no, there's no one to type it up, or it was just like going through. And me and the deputy editor at one point, after a few months, we just literally did take bound volumes and start looking through, and it turns out that old issues would say there was a poem. It'd say, such and so poem, but it wouldn't say the page number. So, so we were like leafing through. So yeah, you feel my pain.
I do feel your pain.
But it worked out, and then the database was great. And in a way, it was kind of fortuitous because I had already set up the structure, and it was just
Right.
like, oh, here's another. Oh my gosh, right.
This will fit right
Yeah,
in here.
yeah,
So in a way, it's a double service because the poems weren't as readily available
No.
just to anybody just going to
No,
look for it.
they're online if you know what you're looking for.
If you know what you're looking
But I love
for, but-
discovery. That's what
Yeah.
being an editor there is so great. You get to discover new voices. You get to see new poems by folks who you might know. Sometimes it's quite a different direction. And, just in the time, I think of the 10 people up for the National Book Awards, 6 were in the magazine,
Yes, yes,
So
exactly.
that's, this year, that's nice to see.
To be able to see that. So for those of you who want to hear more reading from the anthology, Kevin will be at Chevalier's bookstore tomorrow at 7, I think.
Yeah.
In
I don't know.
the evening.
In the evening,
Go
that's right.
online
I
and
think that's
check
right.
that out. But I did want to give them
Yeah,
a little
appreciate
plug
it. Yeah,
and
I'm
you a
looking
little
forward to
plug
it.
as well. So going to Night Watch, which I was reading on the plane coming in today, and we were talking about this earlier. I was going, And the guy, there's nobody in the middle seat, thank you, God. And the guy by the window kind of was leaning over. He said, "You're reading poetry?" I said, yes, I am. And he kind of looked at
Great.
me like, okay, I don't know what I got here, but it's
Did he alert the authorities?
well, I was a little nervous that when the guy came by with the truck, he would say, "Don't give her anything."
Yeah, exactly.
So, but he didn't do that. The book is wonderful and wonderfully structured, and reminded me of what I am saying in my head. You can correct me. Is your love for the long sequence, and the sequence on the conjoined twins, the Jacobs.
McCoys.
The
Billy
McCoys,
Christine.
was a story I didn't know. And the other thing that I didn't say in the intro that many of you may know is that Kevin was the former director of the National History of African American History and Culture and History.
National Museum of African American History
History and Culture. I always get it backwards. History and Culture. So it struck me that you may, in the course of that work, come across the information about them, but in a time when so much of history, particularly of people of color, more particularly of African American people, is being erased or attempted to be erased. How did you come across that story?
I came across it well before then, actually. I think even before I was at Schaumburg, which I was before then.
Yeah, because he doesn't have enough jobs.
I've came to them through their images, because they had lots of images in the 19th century, cabinet cards, carte de visite. And I started collecting them because I'm just a collector by nature. But I also want to sort of have them. They were in my study, like looking over me.
Yeah.
And I think one day they were like, "You better, what are you doing?
I'm trying to talk to you.
Yeah, get it together." And so I started just writing about them, as them, I suppose. And really what struck me is exactly what I sort of mentioned, which is that doubleness. But also, a word like cleave means both.
Yes.
Separate and together.
Yes.
And so how do you that's kind of how they seem to me.
Right.
And this idea of them feeling very comfortable being one being,
Right.
and them talking about themselves as a single person. We can only imagine the harmonies that they had, which, could they have been closer? I doubt it. So how do we think about them? And then also their life story, which was
Their
so
life story, which is
fascinating.
fascinating.
And they end up
exactly.
buying basically the plantation they
Well,
were
that's
on.
what I was going to ask you. So I'm suspecting that many of the poets in the room, or writers of fiction, or lovers of both of those genres, do what I do and go almost immediately to the notes, because I'm reading the table of contents and I want to know the notes. And in the notes, you talk about the father, who wasn't much talked about historically.
Right.
Purchased the land of the slave owner,
Yeah.
of his own, the person who had owned him.
Yes.
And so what I put in my note was, is Kevin planning to write about this? And if not, can I write about this? That is a story
Right.
that in and of itself is
Well, and then they
fascinating.
lived on the land, and it turned out that their neighbor was Chang and Ang, the original Siamese twins. Yeah. So it's just a
my-
wild,
Wild, I mean,
and if
how
I
many,
made that up, you'd be like, that's crazy. You wouldn't believe it, but
but the odds of that are
Yeah.
like impossibly small.
no, fascinating. Like I said, they're infinitely fascinating. But I really didn't want to tell just their biography.
Right,
I really
right.
want to think of them as these philosophers
Yes.
of the self.
Yeah. No, it's a fascinating section. I found myself kind of going back to it, and I was thinking about your jazz and blues books because they're written not exclusively, but frequently in tercets. And so that was the other thing I was doing that was making my fellow passenger a little crazy. I was reading some parts of it out loud.
I mean, that's the least obnoxious thing people do on a plane.
Well,
I mean, people on a plane playing their
playing their music. There were babies crying, the typical thing on
Sure.
a plane. And he finally put in his earbuds, so I kind of
Poetry works. That's what
poetry really works, But I did not, I will admit, have time when I got home to go back and look at some of your other books. But my recollection is you have a thing for the tercet.
Guilty as charged.
Okay.
I do like a 3-line poem, Jelly Rolls and Couplets, but my previous 2 books have a goodly amount of them, and I started using this form with a kind of step down second line.
Right.
And so that continued in the Dante
In the Dante series,
Yeah.
but the Dante, the twins were
There are a lot of things.
irregularly spaced.
Yeah, they're-
so
they're-
there are tercets, and some of the second line is inset, and sometimes
Yeah.
it isn't. It was more regularized in
Well, I
the
hope you
Dante
heard it
section.
that way. Yeah, Dante's more.
Yeah.
Obviously, Dante wrote in tercets and terza rima. So, but I was always drawn to that because it's almost like a little novel, like a beginning, middle, and end. And I always think of, someone asked the filmmaker, the auteur, Jean-Luc Godard, if his films have a beginning, middle, and end, and he said yes, but not in that order. And so they also can do that.
Well, and your endings are frequently open-ended endings. I mean, they're endings on the page, but they're very open-ending in their language. So I just found that was interesting. And then the other thing that was in the notes, I really love the notes. I mean, the poet's somewhere in the notes, and you said it when you were getting ready to read from the section that you began the post-commissioned work that's in the book without telling a soul. And the part of me that, loves intrigue thought, why is that? Why did he not tell anyone? And I was
if it
wondering,
went bad, it would be bad,
it was bad
Like
luck, or
Yeah, it's bad luck. Like if a pitcher's pitching a no-hitter, you don't talk to them.
But
Maybe you don't know that tradition, but
but
I think of that all the time. Like, could I not talk to the pitcher pitching the no-hitter? Probably not.
But since you said it about that section, would you talk to people as you were working on either other sections of this book or other books?
No, probably not.
Okay, all right.
I didn't even talk to Robin until like a week before, and I was like, "How's it going? This devil's really hard. Would you think about doing the devil?" She's like, "You're not doing that to me." No, and I was like, "Oh, I got it. The devil was hard, you know."
Yeah, exactly.
To get right.
But it worked. It worked.
Thanks.
And of course, I want to know, and I believe the audience wants to know, how did you pick the poets for Purgatory? So you've got Berryman.
Yeah.
I'm not remembering the others, but I did.
Keats, Berryman, Beckett. You heard.
Beckett. As I was going through it, I thought, So was there a methodology, or?
No, they all seem to me to be wrestling with some of those same concerns of soul and body, and some of them wrote more explicitly about hell, or Waiting for Godot is about something.
Yes.
Close to that.
Yes.
Purgatory, let's call it.
Yeah.
Berryman just is someone I've written about in prose and edited his selected poems. And I never could, I was always fascinated by him sort of in recovery, which he spent a lot of time in. And it's toward the end, it's meant to be, purgatory is a place before heaven.
Right.
It's not a place without heaven, if that
Right.
makes sense. It has hope, which
Yeah.
is what Dante means for us to understand the difference between hell as punishments. Purgatory, of course, has some versions of apt struggle,
Right.
but it isn't without hope. And this idea that there's a world without hope is really haunting, I think, in the Inferno, especially because he seems to have such sympathy for certain people, the lovers,
Yes.
the suicides, such a beautiful part, and that poem, has some of the lines that that Ciardi has of Dante's, and so I just love that sympathy that he has. But then in Purgatory, it's more like those writers gave me hope as I was writing, even if in the case of Berryman it might seem hopeless. He made something of his struggle and suffering, and what else can we do?
What else can we do? The other thing that you do in that section or in the that whole it's sectioned off. My brain is mush.
That's all right.
Is incorporate some personal history, some African American cosmology, as you say in the note, and I just thought that was brilliant and maybe, well, in lesser hands, perhaps daunting. But I wondered about your decision. I did like finding Ebony magazine in the vestibule. I gotta tell you.
Yes.
But
Jet's there too.
and Jet was there too as well. What was the? How did you come up with that idea?
I think that's just kicking around in my head. Growing up in that tradition, the church tradition, and sort of every different kind of version of that, from, are we allowed to say holy rolling? Versions of Serious Baptists, or then I was AME growing up, and but my father's family from Southern Louisiana is half Catholic, and I actually thought they were all Catholic, and I found out that they were Baptist part. So there was this African American sense of, as I said, the Negro spiritual and the way that it thinks of suffering, but also names it in ways that, like there's a lot of contemporary rock that's real like, everything's great, it's so perfect,
Right.
That doesn't say, things are bad, like this is hell, but there's something waiting,
Exactly.
And what I love about the Negro spirituals is that they also, are literal. Sometimes rather they're allegories.
Right.
So they're like Dante. So they're saying, meet me at the river, but it's also like, meet me actually at the actual river.
At the actual river,
We're actually leaving tonight,
Yeah.
And so that kind of quality I wanted. I wanted that sense that, these African American cosmologies and the African cosmologies, which I do think being at the museum helped me see anew, but I started writing about them in the Gray album years ago, because I was always fascinated about how they are hidden.
Yes.
And how African belief systems were, part of ours now. And gave us this music and gave us this stuff. So if you're trying to write poems, you could do worse than try to, get a little music, get a little faith, get a little leaping. And I come from a long line of preachers on one side of my family and musicians on the other, and that's
So
adds
being
up
a
to
poet
poetry.
was a natural,
Yeah.
was a natural. And so we know that, I think I know that from finish the manuscript, publisher says, fine, working, sending you the galley or whatever, can be lengthy. So what's the next project?
Oh, is that the time?
If you want to tell,
I'm playing.
you don't have to.
I'm still working on the next thing of poems, which I tend to try to like having at least some sense of it when something comes out, because you can get stuck or something like that. But I'm also, neck deep, I think, in a nonfiction book. So, and that starts in Paris between the wars and ends in Harlem.
Well, he had mentioned that to me, and so I was hoping that he would.
Yeah, no,
he would
that's starting
share
to
that
leak out. I
because-
started to publish a little of it, so
Yeah.
that should be out soon-ish, but it's quite
Soon-ish.
long. I felt like the guy in, is it The Wonder Boys, where he's typing and it's like 3-9, and it's like, it's not 300, but 3,000.
Right,
So
right.
it's page 1,000, but,
Wow.
it's going to be a big, history because it's such an interesting time. I mean, how can you not write about Langston Hughes and Baldwin
Exactly.
and Nancy Cunard and all these figures who are endlessly interesting.
Right, right. So I'm going to close with this question because I'm always fascinated with hearing how poets actually structure their time to do what they do. And you do so many things at once. The teaching, the writing, the curating, the podcast, the everything. As a practical matter, you get up in the morning, you have your matcha, then what?
I'm going to tell you a secret.
All right.
Which is
in front of
that
a few close friends.
Exactly. I didn't drink coffee till 5 years ago.
Wow.
So all those books I was working on without coffee. Wow. I didn't know what I was missing. Perhaps that was the secret, was not drinking coffee. But I also didn't understand coffee. Like my friends would be up visiting and they'd be like, have you got any coffee? I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like
I don't do
McDonald's, you know. So drive-through. So, you know, for me, I have a bit of a ritual, but not as strict. But when I'm writing just all the time, which doesn't happen often anymore, but, you know, if I'm like at a writer's retreat or something,
Yes.
I tend to like wake up, you know, mess around. I might watch TV or do something like that. And then there's a moment around 10 o'clock where I just like go in. Yeah. And then I work. I try to remember to eat lunch and then work some more. And then at night, you know, I think the strangest thing is stopping. And I luckily read Hemingway in Movable Feast. He says he stops when he knows what he's going to write the next morning. Okay. And I think that's a really good advice because if you stop when you get to a precipice, it's tough, you know, as opposed to when you wake up, you look at the pages and you go, these are terrible. But you're not, you know, you kind of have a sense of something, and it's brewing, percolating. You make notes or something. Yeah. But that's how prose, I think, works best. Poems, it's a bit more intense, and I tend to write more like the painters I know, who I love and admire, work, which is in bursts.
In bursts,
yeah. I mean, you know, you see a painter and you're like, are you painting your mom? You know, and then suddenly there's a show and they're like in it, you know. Yeah. And I love that sort of messy, all-consuming months of that. It can be hard to live with, I assume. but you know, it's also, I think, how the poems can come, and especially if you're working closely, doing that, you know, like fine work. Right. That
like on the Inferno suite, I'm calling it a suite.
Oh, I love that.
The Inferno suite, are you working exclusively on those? Because now the ideas are, you know, when you read it, you can really see the flow of it. It feels like a natural flow in it. You. So you would work on that, or would you, like me, say, I'm not bored, but I want to do something else?
Yeah, I usually you can even tell from what I'm working on next, I usually have a couple things I'm working on, and sort of, you know, it's almost 2 days on, 1 day off from a project. And that can be, you know, that's just my rhythm if I'm, you know. And that third day can be reading, it can be, you know, watching reality TV, whatever like gets you kind of out of your head a little bit. Yeah. But another project also can do that wonderfully. And I started putting in the back of the past few books all the times I worked on a book. So
is that what those dates are? Because I'm reading this on a PDF, right? And so I get to that and I'm thinking, all right. And it's just like the years. It's the years.
Yeah, it's the year. Sometimes it's a month, and sometimes they'll say like Easter.
And that was for the whole book, or for?
Yeah, that's the whole book.
That's for the whole book.
But a lot of that was Darkling.
Was Darkling, was the Inferno
sort of,
section.
I had like parts of Darkling, but it really wasn't it wasn't good. Right. Until I had that kind of pressure of, I got to create this thing that's dealing with Dante. Because, you know, you can write a series about the dead, and it's like, what is the point? But when you start to think about, well, this is what hell feels like. Right. This is the considerations and the philosophy of, you know, what I'm thinking. And, you know, those writers like Beckett, I always want to write something talking to them. But with Dante as my guide, I also had them as my guide.
Right.
They're my Virgil, you know?
Yes,
And so I
yes.
get to kind of have them there. So I don't know, for me it was like a way to, the datelines are a way to both remind me
Yes.
and to remind the reader, because sometimes, other books appeared in the midst of that.
Right,
It's
right.
16 or 18
I hadn't
years.
seen anybody do it before, so it was really, really fascinating. I assumed that, but it's just really spirit, just has the years, and you're thinking, so what the hell does this go to?
Well,
So,
I love that Adrienne Rich used to
Yeah,
date
do
her
that- do
books
that
after
that way,
a certain
yeah.
point.
Yeah.
And she was really interested in us remembering that this occurred at a
At
certain
a particular time.
in history.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I have dropped my paper on the floor, so I think that means that we're coming to an end. Thank you so,
I really appreciate it, Lynn. Thank you so much. Thanks,
for
everyone.
coming
Good
and
to see you.
gracing us. We are so happy to have you in LA.
Thanks.
So let's buy books. Kevin will sign, and let's have a little wine.
Yes, yes, and one more thanks, Liz Camfield, for all of her work in making tonight possible.
Yes.
Please give her a round of applause. Let's buy books. Let's drink some wine. We'll meet you guys either out in the Poets Garden or in the bookstore. Thank you.